Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Racing House. My name is Sakki, and today we're joined by Adam, also from Racing House. How are you, Adam? We were just talking off air about the gym.
Yes, we were, weren't we? It's good to be back, isn't it? I know
It is
like
good
the
to be
novelty's
back.
still not worn off yet. The novelty's still not worn off, which is good.
Definitely not. Trying to get moving, get our steps up. But today we're going to be talking about our race predictions for the French Grand Prix, which is coming up in a couple of days. We'll also be talking about the tyre wars. Things have really kept on going from the last race in Azerbaijan, where there are a couple of tyre blowouts, which led to, in one case, in the case of Max Verstappen, quite a serious incident, and then another incident with a tyre blowout. And we're going to dive into who's right, who's wrong. We're also talking about contract deals. Obviously, Esteban Ocon has recently announced that he's been signed for another few years at the Alpine team, which is quite interesting. We've all got our thoughts on what impact this will have on the driver market going forward. But let's start off with the tyre blowouts, because that's the caption for the video. We're going to lead with that. And as early as today, as recently today, Lewis Hamilton added more comments. Just to give you a brief kind of overview, Pirelli came out with their report basically saying it was quite weird. They said that the teams were in the parameters that were stated by the FIA, etc., etc. But also the Red Bull reaction was quite weird, because they didn't say that the teams had done anything wrong, but Red Bull have literally gone off on one on the grounds of safety, which is quite interesting. And then Lewis Hamilton today has basically defended Pirelli, saying that they've done all they can, etc., etc. Then another few drivers have piped up and kind of added their comments on the grounds of safety as well. What are your thoughts, Adam? Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Any questions you have, we'll be happy to get them in.
Yeah, I think it's another one of those things, isn't it, where teams are playing by the rules, but also kind of breaking the rules ever so slightly as well. So it's that fine line, isn't it? Those fine lines.
So how can you play by the rules and break the rules at the same time? That is the question.
I watched something, I think it was from the race actually today. I do like the race. And they were talking about how the tyre pressures and things like that, they have to be set, and there are certain parameters and certain things have to be checked at certain times. But there is a certain way to manipulate that, how long you leave the tyre blankets off after that check.
Okay.
When the pressures are checked, all that sort of stuff. There are little ways and means to allow, which it's not to allow, but it's the ways that the regulations haven't been tightened up yet, but I think they probably will be now. To actually make sure that those little loopholes are closed permanently. So if we were in opposite teams, you might think, right, okay, the rules say this, we're going to take the blankets off just before the temperature red, and then we'll put the blankets back on because that's what we're supposed to do. Whereas I might think, right, we're going to take the blankets off, have the temperatures done, and then I'm going to wait 10 minutes. Then I'm going to put the blankets back on for the next time the stewards walk past, and then we'll go out. And we might have lost 1 psi or 1.5 psi. And the reason why this is significant is, do you want me to go and be a little bit tech related?
Go for it. Yeah.
So tyre pressure essentially makes the tyre more rigid, which makes the structure of the tyre safer and more consistent, and then therefore less likely to fail to a point. Obviously, if it's overinflated, then you go the other way. Yeah. What the teams want to do, though, is they want to reduce tyre pressures to give them more grip. So if you imagine a pair of shoes, if you have, let's say, a pair of basketball shoes and a pair of work boots, they can be made of similar materials, but the work boots are a lot harder. And if you try to play basketball in a pair of work boots, you slide it. It's true, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on the court in a pair of basketball shoes, they'll grip the court a lot better because the compound is softer. And that's what F1 teams are doing when they're changing the tyre pressure. So by reducing the pressure, they're enabling the tyre to move ever so slightly in the grooves of the tarmac, giving them more grip. However, what that means is that the tyre is easier to deform under the forces, which makes it structurally weaker, which is why you then have blowouts.
Clever.
Yeah, which is why Pirelli mandate a certain minimum tyre pressure.
Yeah.
to try and stop that from happening, because otherwise teams would go lower and lower with the tyre pressures. The tyres would grip and then suddenly fail because the structural integrity had been compromised. So what needs to happen is, and I think what's been mentioned in a couple of different outlets, is they're going to tighten up those testing regulations as part of Parc Fermé and like the pre-race checks and things like that. All that aside, it seems like Red Bull have provided all the data, and everything that they did during the race was within the parameters of the regulations, which is fine. And I know we've slated Red Bull and Max Verstappen a couple of times on these live streams, rightly or wrongly. I think he's right. I think that the easiest way to fix this is for Pirelli to just make a tyre that works. Just make a tyre that works. I know that's easier said than done, and I know there's millions and millions and millions of euros and dollars and pounds, whatever, spent on this technology every season. But how many times now have we talked about tyre failures?
So many times. A couple of times each season, isn't it?
Yeah. There's always something that changes the complexion of the season. Silverstone is an example last year.
Yeah.
Baku this year. And particularly, Max is a bit of a crybaby at times, but he's right in what he said. If it was the other rear tyre, could have been catapulted into that pit wall.
Yeah, that was very interesting what Lando said. Yeah,
which would have been a serious incident. So yeah, but obviously, if Max zigs, Lewis is going to zag, isn't he? They're always going to say the opposite.
That seems to be the pattern, isn't it?
What do you think? What's your take on it?
I just think there's a lot more to it as well. I feel like the teams are potentially, or a couple of teams are utilising some sort of loophole based on what I've read, because they've taken offence to it and they seem to be hammering on about the tyres. But the safety grounds, that's one of the kind of grounds that we often see Red Bull lodging complaints on, the grounds of safety. This would obviously, I reckon it would benefit Max to have that extra grip, because we've already seen it when he's off the grid at the start. Like, he just has super great starts. But I just think Lewis's comments, the mind games continue.
You just mentioned something interesting there. Are those really good starts that Max seems to have every time a result of having slightly lower tyre pressures on those rears? Just ever so slightly.
Yeah, because we've seen...
Because of some of this.
Yeah, we've seen Lewis mention it before. I think it was last year he mentioned it about tyre pressure. But the way that he's come out and basically said that Mercedes are doing it a way that they know is right, I think, yeah, Mercedes have obviously picked up on something and they're basically abstaining from doing it, just like they do the flexi wing. And they're just basically highlighting it. Like, for a matter of fact, they're making a comment on it. They're using the media to their advantage, just so that the FIA are definitely picking it up, because Pirelli have obviously been given a mandate. They've been given a direction. The FIA and Formula One say build this tyre, because the FIA and Formula One could pick the most reliable tyre in the world, which would never explode like that. Okay, never is probably an exaggeration, but 99.9% times it just wouldn't, regardless of how long you were driving for. They could do that, but they've built this to spec. They've built it to kind of add some sort of kind of wall, basically, where it will just...
tactical reasons, isn't it?
Yeah, drop off a cliff. Yeah, add more drama to the race. So for Pirelli are kind of in a hard place, because they know this tyre has been built to spec. The teams are potentially doing things that are going around loopholes, and the FIA and Formula One, really, this kind of stuff adds to the drama of the race. So it is a bit of a weird one. I doubt they'll change it on safety grounds, because on a whole, the tyres have been pretty decent so far this season. And it's provided some decent races. So I think it's part of the overall mind games, and we'll see how that develops. But I don't think they even said anything too bad. They didn't say anything bad, did they? It's just the safety grounds that people are just...
Yeah, I think the issue was they didn't really say anything. There was a lot of words, but I don't think they really said a great deal, which I think is why certain people i.e. Red Bull, don't like it very much because there's not been like a firm line on, right, this is the issue, or this is what teams are doing wrong, or this is what we need to improve. It's just a bit woolly.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Just all a bit political.
Very political. Let us know in the comment section down below what you think. Do you think Pirelli were a bit wishy-washy? Do you think Red Bull are right? What do you think of Lewis's comments? I know a few of the other drivers like George and Sergio have come out and said safety is the most paramount. So let us know what you think. Before we move on to the race predictions, I just want to show you guys who are watching it our 50k special merch that we'll be releasing. It will be limited numbers available. It's just been put up on Instagram. So we recently hit 50,000 followers on Instagram. So make sure you stay tuned and you are following us on Instagram to see when that will be released. There's only going to be a limited number again, but it's just to celebrate us hitting that milestone. Soon we'll be hitting 50k on YouTube as well. So make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching this on playback. Moving on to race predictions. It's been a long while since the last race. They keep on doing this to us, but the season has just been so stop-start. Let's hope there aren't any major kind of cancellations again. We're going to go for, let's go for our standard race prediction and then a wild card race prediction. Who do you think, what do you think the 1, 2, 3 and the pole position is going to be, Adam?
I can see this being a Mercedes weekend, a strong Mercedes weekend.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Well, a strong Hamilton weekend, which we'll come to later.
Okay.
I think the track is probably a little bit more suited to Mercedes than these previous street circuits have been, just due to the way that the cars are set up and the longer wheelbase and things like that. There is a lot of high-speed sections and also a fair amount of high downforce, fairly tricky, slower sections as well. So I think it's a nice kind of level because we've had these very tight street circuits. And obviously, we've got some quicker circuits coming up a little bit later on in the calendar. I think this one will be a good example just to see how finely balanced the teams can have these cars. Because if you look at that kind of, particularly the last sector of the lap, there's some very tricky complexes there. Straight after that long straight with the chicane in the middle. So I think it'll be a strong weekend for Hamilton. I imagine Max will be there or thereabouts again as well. I think it's going to be another head-to-head.
Yeah, I think for me, seeing the way that the season's panned out, I can imagine Max is able to have a good start, potentially second on the grid for qualifying. I reckon Charles might get another pole position, purely based on the fact that they've had such a good start to the season. I think Ferrari are really on the up and up. So I reckon it'll be between Charles and maybe Lewis for pole position, but it's going to be up in the mix. But I don't think Max will necessarily have a great race. I think Mercedes will come back super strong. But also we need to factor in the fact that Red Bull are going to be having quite a few changes to their car. So the impact of the tyre pressure, we don't know how that's going to play out because it's going to be on the FIA's radar now for them to be, because they might be aware of what kind of tricks are being kind of implemented, what kind of loopholes are being used. So they might be monitoring that pretty much from the get-go. The flexi wing as well. Obviously now it's going to be something that's monitored from what I remember. So Red Bull have already basically stated that it's going to cost them a lot of money to change that. Who knows what kind of impacts that's going to have on the overall aero package? Like, who knows? They might bring new developments to the car. So it is a bit of an unknown, but Max has performed so well this season. I reckon he'll continue to do that. He might have he's probably going to have a better start than Lewis, but I think strategy and the Mercedes package overall, especially like you said on this track, will come through. I can imagine Lewis and the Mercedes team just doing something with their strat and just stealing the race, basically. I can imagine that happening. It's just classic.
Yeah. you always do this, because you always give these predictions, and you always make me think of something with what you talk about. So with the flexi wings,
yeah,
this circuit is actually really well suited to flexi wing. Because if you think about the layout of the track, it's very quick until the tail end of the first sector, where there's that very tight section, and then again it's a long straight into a chicane, so a sudden change in downforce needed, and then another straight, and then a high downforce, lower speed section. So if Red Bull have had to bring different wings, and they've had to adjust their settings slightly and make them a little bit more rigid, I think it actually could be a difficult weekend for Red Bull, depending on how much difference it makes, because we get to see how much difference it actually makes. I think certainly in Barcelona there was quite a lot of flex in that one, quite a lot. But I think on this track, I think it's as relevant, if not more relevant, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
When you also mentioned Ferrari, and I disagree with you on the Ferrari point. I think they're going to struggle this weekend.
Okay.
So I think the reason why Ferrari have done well these past couple of races in these tighter street circuits is because they've got a very compliant rear now, a very compliant rear suspension and all that set up there. It's not going to matter quite as much here. So I think there will. I don't think either of them will be in the top 5 by the end of Sunday.
Okay. Because that was 2019, the year where they had the dodgy engine. Okay, yeah. So I was just looking at the results for that race. Charles came up in third place. Actually, he finished in third on the podium. So I was just thinking, might be a good track for him, but obviously that engine power came through. It came through strongly, but they're not going to have that.
Questionable means.
Yeah, very questionable means. What about your wildcard predictions? We had a lot of wildcard kind of results in the last race. Is it going to be possible again?
I don't even know if it's a wildcard anymore, but I predict a Norris podium again.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's wild anymore, though. I don't think it is it?
No, not really. I think he's been so consistent. He's been super, super consistent during this season. Like, he's really settled into that team, showing up Ricardo a little bit, just showing everyone that he's a serious geezer, isn't it? He's just stepped up to the plate.
I think it'll be another good weekend for Aston Martin as well. I don't think they'll be sniffing podium, but I think it'll be a good weekend for them.
Because obviously Vettel finished in P2 in the last race. Because I did a post about that, basically saying it's his best finish since, I can't remember what race it was, but I did a post about it.
What race? Long ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think about 3 years ago. But do you think it's a turning point for him? Because I get the feeling that he is starting to get to grips with the car. And I was like, yes, go on, Seb. You're actually rescuing my 2021 race season predictions. Because I thought he would do better than Stroll. And he is doing better than Stroll, which I surprised myself because those predictions were shockingly bad.
They were
shockingly bad and bold. But Bottas, he's having an horrendous season, like I predicted.
He is.
Like, right. Remember last stream you said that he would win a race because of the car, and I said,
I would change that.
I said no, and then I was like, oh, actually, that's logical because he's got one of the best cars on the grid. But we will talk about Bottas more later. But given his performances, he's just not hooking it up. Like, he's just mentally gone. He's mentally gone. He's like
back to your Vettel point that you made. I think it's symbolic of a turnaround with how he's feeling there. I think a good result has been coming. It was a result of tactics and a result of coincidence with red flags and safety cars and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So he was fortunate, but you've got to be fortunate sometimes, and that's fine. He wasn't in the top 3 in terms of pace. But
Yeah.
on the day, it all went according to their hopes.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a really good moment for that team as a whole. Really, I think it's a really good place for them to now start building from, because when it was first announced and we were talking all about the different livery ideas, and we were talking about all the branding and everything that could come with Aston Martin being in F1 and all that. We were so excited, and there was such a lot of anticipation.
Yeah.
It kind of just fell flat because they had such a poor start. So hopefully this latest result for Vettel is kind of drawn a line under that period where it was a bit rubbish. And hopefully now they can begin to build and start to. I don't think they're going to get to that 3rd spot this year, because I think McLaren and Ferrari are both too good. But they can start sniffing around those battles and being involved in those races with those teams.
Yeah, it might be better for them to write off the season and focus on the 2022 car, because I think the aero changes, those grooves underneath the car, because their car was so like the Mercedes, they're just the biggest loser out of it. Mercedes have the budget to be able to kind of figure it out. They've got the engine power to be able to kind of figure it out. The Mercedes engine is built for that car, whereas the Aston Martin is more like a mishmash of different parts from different manufacturers. So I think they really suffered there. But I think Seb is enjoying being the leader, because he's got the experience over Stroll. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that Stroll lacks, that experience and the know-how, because he's got the speed there.
Young, isn't he? He's still so young.
Yeah, but I think people forget. I often forget how young he is. Is he the 2nd youngest on the grid? 3rd youngest? Let us know in the comment section. I think it's 2nd youngest after Lando. Oh, he was actually, or 3rd maybe. Let us know in the comment section. Yeah, but
early 20s though, and he's
one of the youngest. Yeah, he's one of the youngest drivers. I think for Vettel, it's definitely a good. Hopefully, he can keep the momentum going. But judging off the past few seasons, after he has a good performance, he kind of just falls off a cliff. So hopefully, he can keep that performance going. Moving on to the next topic, we're going to be talking about the driver market. So let's start off with talking about Esteban Ocon. He obviously signed a multi-year deal to stay at Alpine, which for me, that really surprised me. Like, I thought, wow, that is a bold move. That's a very bold move. But for me, it's more of an indication of what potentially could be happening at other teams. It's like can you remember when Charles was signed on a multi-year deal out of nowhere? And similar with Max, I think. I'm not sure if it was at the same time, but it's just like, I think that the team sniffed that other stuff was happening around them, and they wanted to kind of tie him down for the deal. And he has had such a good start to the season. He's outperformed his teammate, 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso, which has really impressed me. I was expecting Alonso to come back in and just give it to him, get off to a flying start. We've seen Alonso improve in the last couple of races, especially the last race, but that doesn't take away from what Ocon has done this season and at the end of last season, where he got his first podium. So what do you think of them signing him up for a multi-year deal? They missed the trick. I'm not going to say on which driver, but
I think this is the first domino to fall. I think they will all start falling now.
Yeah,
because this really reminds me, and I know he's staying put, so it's a bit different. But this reminds me of when we all found out that Carlos Sainz was against Ferrari. Because this is the first one where Ocon's he's not that top tier, but he's good. I think he's proved himself the second half of last season and then into this season. I think he's proved that he's good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not anyone's star or anything like that, but he's a solid driver and he's young. He's only 24, so he's still got room to improve. He's also one of Toto's drivers, which I think this is the key. So I would have said, I think we've spoken about this before, whether it was on the stream or off, just talking to each other.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a dark horse for that second Mercedes seat because of his links with Toto and the fact that he was a Mercedes Academy driver and came through that setup.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that Ocon is out of play for that seat, and he's quite categorically out of play because he signed a 3-year deal. So he's done now until the end of 2024, which seems like a long time away. That I don't think the Bottas position at Mercedes is going to stay there. I think he's going to go somewhere else. I think if he continues, particularly if he continues anything like this, he's got to have a really, really strong rest of the season. Or I don't want to go too much into the next topic, but they've always waited until mid-year to do his extension. If I'm Toto now, I'm not going anywhere near an extension. I'm not interested. There is one very obvious driver for that second seat, which we'll come on to in a minute.
Yeah.
And then that leaves a spot at Williams. So we've got a driver that's proven to be a good driver historically, and maybe isn't quite so much anymore. And we've got an open seat. So maybe that's the match there.
Yeah.
But it's never that simple, is it?
No, it never is. Are you surprised that they didn't get Gasly? I was very surprised that they didn't get Gasly. Like, that really did shock me that they signed him up for that length of a deal.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't really surprise me given who his management team is, given the clout and how good they are at business, aka Toto Wolff and his management company. So I hope that Gasly does get an opportunity somewhere else, because he really has shown how good a driver is, especially last season when he won the race that he did. And then this season, he's been very, very consistent, very consistent. So I really do hope, because he's secured a points position, a points finish for the past 5 consecutive races, which is very impressive in that car. But I think it is, for me, it's a massive loss for Gasly. Let's hope he doesn't end up just staying at AlphaTauri, because I've got a funny feeling that they're lining it up for another one of their drivers, which is...
I think there's 2 ways to look at the situation for Gasly, because how much better is Alpine than AlphaTauri, really? Not that much better.
Yeah.
And he clearly does well in that environment, and he's clearly well liked in that environment, and it seems to suit him. However, the long arm of Helmut Marko and whoever else is involved, there will be another young driver in that AlphaTauri seat soon. It might not be next year, but I wouldn't be, surely it would be the year after that. It's got to be, because that's what AlphaTauri is for. They're not designed. They're not intended to try and take points away from Red Bull, really, because that's what essentially every time Daz has a good performance, he's taking points away from Red Bull. Yeah, which is the opposite of what the aim is.
There's always a ceiling to it as well, isn't there? Yeah. Even if it's capable of winning, there's a ceiling to it. Yeah. It's sad.
It is sad. It is sad. I think there's a slim chance, and I've mentioned this before, I think there's a slim chance that Mercedes go for Gasly. Very, 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 very slim chance. I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible.
I don't think it'll happen.
I know you don't. I know you think I'm mental when I say this, don't you? You think I'm crazy for saying that.
I just think, we'll talk about it in a bit, but
right, this is my reasoning now. This is my reasoning.
Go on.
So you've got a seat for next year next to Lewis. Who is best available driver at the moment on the grid?
What, even if they're tied into a contract?
Yeah. Who would you say is available that you could get?
Oh, okay, not Max, not Charles. Has to be George. Gasly.
How much longer has Lewis got left?
Yeah, not long. Let's jump onto this topic anyway. That's one of the key reasons. Yeah, that is some good points there. This is one of the main reasons why I think it's a done deal. It's a here we go for Fabrizio Romano. It's been signed already, because if you look at Lewis, or the age makeup of the Mercedes team, it's probably the oldest, one of the oldest out of all the teams. You've got 2 drivers over 30, and then pretty much every other team, McLaren is a mix of old and young. Well, not 30 is not old. Come on, guys.
Prime, really, isn't it? It should be prime.
Prime of your life, yeah. Just like me and you, mature drivers. But yeah, McLaren is a mix of mature and young. Aston Martin, mature and young. Red Bull, mature and young. Ferrari is probably the exception where it's 2 young drivers, but that's beneficial for them long term, especially when one of them is considered a top tier driver. I'm not going to say which one. But yeah, it's a very old lineup for Mercedes. And Toto being Toto, he's openly talked about his contingency plans and planning for the future and potentially taking a step away from that team principal role, making it more of a duo role between 2 people. And this will be part of his contingency plans. He'll be thinking, who's going to take this team forward when Lewis does retire? Because Lewis will retire at some point soon. It might not be next season or the season after, but they need to be planning for the future. And with all respect to Bottas, with all respect to Lewis, they're not spring chickens. You can't plan for the future with more mature drivers. You need to have that mix of youth coming through to energize the team, give new ideas. This isn't just regardless of the performances of the drivers as well. Like Lewis, you can make a big argument for because the reasons are obvious. But Bottas, his performances have just not been there. They've not been good enough. If he's fighting for a contract now, he's not doing enough. Like we all know when a driver is kind of seeking a new renewal or a new contract, they step it up massively. They're like, wow, where did that come from? And then we find out a couple of weeks later, contract signed. So it might already be the case that Bottas knows deep down, so he's just fallen off. Or it might just be the case that, as I predicted, he's going to have one of the worst seasons ever. Or it might be the case that it truly isn't decided, but I don't believe that for a second. Like you said, I think the first domino has been triggered. Toto and his management company are getting things in line with all their kind of client drivers. I really do think this has triggered off something, or something's been triggered where certain teams are going to be locking down their drivers. Alpine have publicized it first. I just think it's a matter of time before they do it, because Mercedes can't go forward and plan for the future with Bottas, the number 2 driver that can't be relied upon. Because Lewis has shown that's a race-winning car. I'm looking at Bottas's results now: a third of retirement, a third retirement, a 12th. That's not great. And he's sitting in 6th position. He's sitting below Charles, below Lando, below Sergio Perez, below Lewis, below Max. Sergio Perez having an absolute stormer, doing what Red Bull needed, but really they don't want him doing that. I don't think Red Bull really want him doing that well. But yeah, it is, for me, it's very ominous. It's a matter of time before they make that announcement, because these kind of rumors in F1, we all know when they pop up, and they keep on popping up, because they popped up a few months ago and then it went away and it's come back now. And they don't just come up like this for no reason.
The question is, has Eddie Jordan said it yet?
That's the true stamp of legitimacy, isn't it?
That's when you can write it in pen. You don't need to pencil it in anymore. Yeah, I if I was a betting man, I'd say it's already halfway done.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well. I think it's a smart move, because
it's the obvious move, isn't it? It's the logical, obvious move, because we've got Lewis, who's just a perennial, one of the greatest of all time. And I think Lewis is at a point now where he can make the case that he's one of the greatest sports people of all time, not just drivers. Because if you look at what he's done, just on track, without all the other stuff, just on track, just looking at his performances, he's one of the most dominant athletes of all time, I think.
Yeah.
And there's been a little bit of rumbling, hasn't there, around George Russell lately, saying, is he ready? Like, he's had a couple of mistakes, like he's still not scored that first point. He's had a couple of opportunities to score that point, and he's not made the most of it.
Mm.
The thing is, George Russell, until he got in at Williams, won at every stage of his career, from being whatever years old when he first got in the car.
Every single one.
He's used to being at the front. He's used to leading a race. He's used
winning,
to taking the lead, standing on that top step of the podium. This stuff in the Williams is new to him. He doesn't it's not part of his fabric. Same with any of these drivers. Like they're perennial winners until they get to this stage. This is the ultimate kind of it's the ultimate formula.
Yeah,
I think he'll be fine in that Mercedes.
Yeah,
and I think the sooner they get him in it, the better. You know how I feel about George Russell based on Sakki last year. What was I like when he was in that Mercedes last year?
I mean, that was one of the few races that I shelled out money to pay for, because I was like, I'm doing this properly. I'm getting the popcorn out, put it on the big screen, forget the laptop. I'm watching this race. We were both so excited. I think everyone was excited. So excited. And if you think about it, looking back in hindsight, it was such a weird move. When does a team ever borrow another team's driver in this modern day and age of racing? It's like Man United borrowing Haaland from Borussia Dortmund for a game. I know it's different leagues, but it's the equivalent. Haaland's the young, up-and-coming sportsman. They don't have any strikers. Swoop him up. Imagine that. Imagine the basketball team doing that. It's when you think about it, in hindsight, it's actually ludicrous, because they had a full-on, probably quite a few options that they could have gone for.
Probably Stoffel Van Dorn or Nick De Vries.
Yeah, they're reserve driver.
Really good. Like
they could have gone for their reserve
really
driver. Their reserve driver, yeah. They just completely diminished that role, because what's his purpose? They obviously don't trust him. They don't trust him.
I think as much as anything, it was an opportunity to put George on the spot and say, right, come on, let's see you.
It's just, when you think about it, it's
as far as
insane.
I'm concerned, he was faultless in that race. He was so good. And aside from all the problems, he looked in control. And even after the first issue that he had, he looked like he was going to come back and still take it. But just everything went wrong for him. When it was not his fault. But he in any, I think, if you played that race out 10 times, I think he wins 8 times.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it could go wrong. It did go wrong, but even though he finished behind Bottas, his performance was far beyond Bottas's. It was embarrassing for Bottas up until it went wrong for George, and it was just out of his hands. But I see it as a perfect opportunity now, because Mercedes can't rely on Bottas. So if they get him in from next season, they're basically not missing out on anything, because at the moment they're used to a one-man team. They're used to Lewis just going out there on his own and having to beat both of the Red Bull cars, battle with Lando Norris and Charles. They're used to not having someone there as a rear gunner. So what's the worst that can happen by bringing on a George Russell, who has that experience of leading championships and winning races and has got that raw talent? It's a win-win situation for them. And it's for them, planning for the future is probably the biggest thing, because they can keep it fairly calm and keep Lewis completely happy, because Lewis, being Lewis, he's not going to want to step back into that position from 2014 to 2016, where there were 2 number ones at the team, 2 drivers good enough to win the championship. And it's going to be the case again when Russell joins. It's going to be a real challenge for him. But, new regs, new everything, it's different.
Yeah, I think it's different because it's more of a passing the baton type of relationship. I would hope, anyway. I would think it would be.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well to consider is that all the cars change next year. So all this experience that Bottas has got in this current car that they've been developing for years, and there's been incremental change.
Lost.
Everything's going to be completely different next year. So you're starting from scratch, and we've talked about this a few times as well. I think if you're going to make big changes, now is the time. You do it now.
Why not? Why not? Thank you, everybody, for the comment section. Keep the comments coming in. I think just touching on the Russell Bottas kind of discussion, I think obviously Lewis is going to be gone in a few years, I imagine. It's going to happen, and especially if he manages to win the title this year, I think he may not even come back because of how kind of risky it is and people putting their lives on the line. Like, it is still a dangerous sport. I think, it's going to be more of a passing on the baton thing as well. Like you said, there's not going to be.
You've said this before as well, that he clearly wants to do other stuff as well. He wants to do other things, which is well within his rights to do. So I think the longer he stays, he has less time to do those things.
Yeah, and he's still fairly young. Got a question from Hugo. Do you want to read it out, Adam?
Yeah. How do you see Mercedes Bottas-Russell dynamic impacting their chances at the Constructors' Championship? Would Bottas race better or worse if Russell is signed soon? How much worse can he get?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Like, I don't think it could get any worse. I had a feeling he'd have a bad season.
We know, Sakki, you called it, right? We know.
Did I say that by any chance? I had a feeling, but Mercedes will probably literally just be thinking they've got nothing to lose, because there is a potential that they could lose the constructors title here this year, but Lewis could potentially win the drivers, because it's always a possibility that a driver wins the title but a constructor isn't the same as the driver title. So with the strong performances of Red Bull, like at the moment, they're looking a lot stronger, considering Max is first in the championship, Perez is third, I believe. It's a possibility. So right now, Mercedes aren't in a great position at all for the championship that they really want to be winning.
I've got a bit of a trivia question, and I definitely don't know the answer, which is what I'm asking. I wonder what has been the biggest points gap or percentage gap in points between two teammates at the end of the season.
It's a good question. It's a good question. I'm going to go and look at that once we're done on the live stream.
It's a really good idea for you, Sakki.
Yeah, thank you. If you do know the answer to that, let me know in the comments section. We've got a comment here from you, man. Thank you for joining. Have you guys admitted how wrong you are about Seb? No, I haven't. So I'm going to admit it now. I was massively wrong about Seb. But, I do genuinely enjoy seeing him back fighting for podiums, at least. I think if he can keep up the confidence levels, I think for him, massively, confidence is a big thing. After that race in Germany, I can't remember, was it 2018? Where he binned it during the rain.
19.
Yeah, that was, I feel like that really triggered a lot within him. Yeah, because was he leading the race at that point? Yeah, and like everyone was rooting for him. I think he's just a massive confidence driver. Not necessarily one of the most gifted or having the ability to react, but I think he thrives on confidence and routine. And if he's out of the routine of competing and winning, it's going to be hard for him. So I apologize to you, Seb. I know you're watching. Keep the questions coming in, or leave a question in the comment section if you're watching on playback. Thank you for joining, everyone. Unless you've got any more things to say, Adam, I think I'll let you go and have your dinner.
Yeah, I'm not going to apologise for the Seb comments yet. I'll apologise if he gets another podium. How about that? I will write that person a written apology if he gets another podium this year. How about that?
What is he? Is the fourth leading podium?
If he gets another podium this season, I'll write him a written apology.
Cool. I'll hold you to that. Before we leave, if you want to know more about the t-shirts that I showed you guys earlier, it's the free champions on Fernando Alonso retiring. I know he's come back, but this shot is so iconic. Click the link in the description to find out more. Sign up to the wait list. It's going to be limited quantity available. But that is pretty much it. Got a laughter from you, man. He said, yes, he enjoyed your lack of apology. But yeah, we're going to leave you now. Hope you enjoyed. If you're watching on playback, leave a comment for us or ask us a question. Make sure you like, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. But that's it. Thank you for joining, everyone.